If you're afraid of success, go ahead and tune out because this segment is not for you. Every year, Higher Ed talks about change, but Insights EDU 2026, that's not another conference. It's the catalyst. It's where fresh data drops, revealing real insights on how modern learners are thinking, searching, and deciding right now. And here's a spoiler for higher ed leaders. Most institutions aren't keeping up. 3 days on the beach, February 17th to the 19th, 2026, in Fort Lauderdale. Over 65 powerhouse speakers, 40 sessions, zero fluff. We're talking unfiltered strategy, AI integrations, and forward thinking built for the leaders who want to disrupt before they're disrupted. So here's the question. Are you ready to lead transformation or be overtaken by it? Reserve your spot now at insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15th. EdUp Experience has brought you powerful conversations with more than 400 college presidents and higher ed leaders, over 1,000 episodes and counting. Now, we're inviting you to join us in shaping the future of higher ed podcasting. For just $5.99 a month, you lock in that rate for life, but only if you sign up before December 31st, 2025. As a supporter, you'll get ad-free early access to episodes. Prices go up after December 31st, but your rate never will. Visit edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com. Click support the show and join our community today. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, and we are back on another episode of our ongoing series called EdUp Extra. Why extra? Because who doesn't like a little extra goodness in their life? So today with me, I have a first-time guest. She is Dr. Susan Ray, and she's the Associate Professor of English at Delaware County Community College. Susan, how you doing today?
I'm good. I've been looking forward to this. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I've been looking forward to this too. So I like to get right into things. So tell me all about you. What do you do? How do you do? And tell me all about it.
Okay. Well, I guess to jump in, the beginning of the educational journey is I'm a huge literature dork. I grew up just constantly reading, love my English classes. So I have a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in English. My doctorate actually focused on the Victorian novel. And I always tell my students, don't worry, I will never inflict that upon you. But I've been teaching composition and literature for 20 years to date myself. And I've taught at places like Binghamton University and Temple and Penn State. But for the past 13 years, I've been at Delaware County Community College. Go Phantoms. We're right outside of Philadelphia. And yes, I know that Marta has been on your podcast and she is an amazing leader. I think she's been with us for 3 years, but she's doing a lot of great things for our college. And yeah, so I've been teaching. So we teach developmental writing. We teach freshman composition. We teach Fresh Comp 2, which is writing about literature. I teach British literature and children's literature, and we have such a diverse, wonderful mix of students. And for the past couple of years, I've been very emphatic about bringing AI into the curriculum. I've always been a big proponent of digital literacy. So even, 20 years ago when it looked much different, we always talked to students in the liberal arts. We call it the CRAP test, which is CRAAP. Yeah, I know it's not the best acronym, but when they're looking at sources, look at currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, purpose. Like these were always skills that we were bringing into the composition classroom because the way you engage with language is very much affected by how we communicate. So AI just seemed like the logical next step. And so that's been a big part of my work in my classes the past few years.
That's fantastic. So I've been following you on LinkedIn and I've been seeing your progression in development with AI in the classroom. And I saw something about a survey that you did. And so if you could just talk about that survey, how did it come about? Give us all the details about what you learned through that survey.
Absolutely. It was really, really useful for me because I'd been playing around with AI in the classroom for the past 2 years, but I wanted to make sure what I was doing was what students needed. And it was meeting their questions, their concerns. And so almost on impulse, I designed a survey and ChatGPT helped a little bit. Like I talked out my ideas with it and it helped me frame some of my questions. And I was very transparent with that with them. But I got about 75 respondents, which is pretty good for right before finals week in spring semester.
Mm-hmm.
And just the results were in line with what I expected, but more so. So I asked them, what was your experience with AI before college? Because
Mm.
most of our we have a lot of returning adult learners, but the majority of our students are right out of high school. And 35% said they'd been taught it was always cheating. So the only framework they had was that AI is this negative cheating machine that bad people use. Another 44% had had absolute silence. So no guidance. And this is not a criticism of our high school teachers. Like there's no framework. But so they're arriving to my classroom where only 1 in 5 of them had ever been taught, oh, it's a tool. It's a useful tool if used properly. And I realized that's what I really wanted to do in my classrooms, which is show them it's neither good or bad. It's a tool. It's a double-edged sword for sure, but it's how we wield it. 89% of them have already used ChatGPT.
Oh, wow.
Most of them at least once a week. So I usually engage with ChatGPT and OpenAI just because I know that's what they're using. So that's kind of the framework that guides me there. And I asked them, what are you using AI for? And so it was, fill in the blank. And I got lots of interesting things, stuff we'd expect, like study help, recommending movies, understanding this part of my job better. The one that threw me, Elvin, was a lot of them are using it to craft responses on dating apps. And so it was not relevant to my class. It was just interesting. And I was like, so you've got two chatbots wooing each other before people meet. Like this is just a very Black Mirror kind of new world. So that was just interesting fact. But the most concerning ones, or the ones that fueled me the most, was I said, what are your anxieties about AI? And a lot of them was like, it's going to be a part of my job. I know it's going to be a part of my job. And we have many nursing majors, teaching majors, all kinds of STEM motivated, the whole spectrum. But almost all of them commented, it's going to be a huge part of my career. And I just want to be prepared. And one comment that stuck out to me, she said, she or he, I don't know who wrote the
Mhm.
comment. They said that I'm sure I missed out on a job opportunity in February because I admitted I knew nothing about AI. And so that kind of, it's like, okay, I know I'm an English professor, but digital literacy has always been a part of what we do in there. It's how we communicate and shape and interact with language. I need to be bringing this into the classroom in ways that are meaningful for them. And that has built into, making connections. Like you mentioned, LinkedIn, I've met so many wonderful instructors all over the United States and Canada and the UK learning what they're doing. And I've been leading professional developments at different colleges. So it's snowballed, but it all really starts with this survey and figuring out what do they need, not what do I want to teach, not what's the coolest tool, but how can I help them move forward in their educational career.
No, that's amazing. And there seems to be like this tension, right, between the students. And you mentioned it. It's like they knew it's essential to use AI for their careers, right? But then others like are a fear of AI, right, in their futures. So how do you navigate that tension?
Yes. Mostly honesty, because some of the students have said things like, I'm worried it's going to. One of the quotes that stood with me too in that survey was, I'm interested in being a writer and I'm worried AI is going to replace creative voices.
Mm.
And so I always leave a day, or if it's an asynchronous class, like a whole lesson on just a space to talk about AI. And I try to just kind of be just a listener. So I'll show headlines about the really positive, amazing things that are being accomplished with AI, and then some of the negative, like the environmental concerns or the copyright issues and like scraping authors and artists' data to create these large language models and image generators, and let them just kind of flow, because a lot of them haven't had the spaces to just have these conversations. So I find that's really useful. And I also love to show them the limitations of AI, because even though it's
Mm.
sounding more human, it is. But I have an exercise where I'm like, all right, take your favorite songwriter. And I'm very clear, you have to find someone who writes their own lyrics. That's a lot of them will reach for like Taylor Swift. I've had Bob Dylan, lots of things. Just give a large language model two of these songs with just the lyrics, and say, write a song in the same style. And they will see it is so wildly off from what their favorite artist is doing. Someone said this sounds like a Taylor Swift wannabe and her metaphors have no meaning and this is hollow. And so I like to show them that it's not an oracle in your phone that can do anything. There are serious limits to what AI can do, and humans are still very much needed. And it's not, I don't think it's going to replace us in that way. So I don't try to tell them that I'm all knowing, but just from the limitations I've seen, that their careers are still very much viable, and not to feel hopeless in the face of AI.
That's a really cool example of an assignment. Can you talk about how you scaffold assignments so the students can use it for critical thinking instead of like shortcuts?
Absolutely. If I could start by just saying that we get such a variety of digital literacy levels. I had one student after my Brit class, after class, she's about my age, and she said, hey, I'll admit, I don't know what AI is. Like, can you
Oh,
just
wow.
tell me? This was in the
Yeah.
spring. Yeah. 'Cause she'd been a nurse for years. She was returning to college. And so pulled it up on the whiteboard and I showed her just a couple large language models and what it did. And she gave out a big sigh and she said, "Wow, now I know how my daughter's been getting through her homework so fast." But it was grounding for me that I feel sometimes we start this conversation kind of in the middle with an assumption that students know how to work with large language models. So I started a baseline. I don't assume any knowledge. And the first assignments we do are really like fill in the blank prompting. The first
Mm.
assignment we do, it's a prompt for a large language model that's like a learning profile, and they upload it alongside my syllabus. So they give their general age, what their major is. It asks them questions like, what have you liked and disliked about English and reading and writing classes and your skill set. And they upload that along the syllabus with the syllabus. And it tells them, okay, here's where you might struggle in this class, but here are the support systems built in. And my favorite part is it tells them, how is this related to your future career? Because I'll get students, especially accounting majors and nursing majors. They're like, why is writing about literature going to be useful for me in any way? And I think it's very cool in that as much as we want students to sit down and read a 15-page syllabus, they don't always, but the
Mhm,
AI
mhm.
has personalized it to them. And then for people new to the game, they're seeing how AI works, right? It's just synthesizing things. It's bringing ideas together. And then we build, right? So the next step might be research. So I teach this 3-page short story called Story of an Hour, set in 1894 by Kate Chopin. I'm not ruining anything if anyone wants to read it and hasn't. In the first paragraph, she finds out her husband's died and she's not destroyed by this.
Mhm.
And that would, if it was 2025, that story would make no sense. She'd be an awful person. But it's about, of course, women's rights and freedom. So I have students, all right, go to AI and ask for relevant historical facts about women's rights and gender expectations in the 1890s. But ask AI also to give you links to prove those facts because we've talked about hallucinations and, AI is trying to find the language you're looking for, and sometimes the facts are wrong. And then they use that to guide, like, I ask them as they're analyzing the story, did this inform your responses? And so they're doing all these cool things in this assignment. They're engaging with AI. They're fact checking its output. They're doing literary analysis. They're doing deep reading. I find there's ways to bring AI in against scaffolding, and we move to more advanced projects where they've got a lot more freedom to how they want to bring it in. But I think that builds confidence, and there's not this fear, this expectation like, oh, I have to understand this technology to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, wow. And that's amazing. And I understand that you also did a AI transparency journal assignment, right? Talk us through
Mhm.
that and why has it been so impactful?
Yes. Just to go back to the survey, this is where the AI Transparency Journal started. One student said, "I was always taught AI is bad, but when a teacher
Mm.
tells you something's bad, you get curious about it." And she likened it to a banned book. And she's like, and then you're just you're engaging with it on your own with like no concept of what it's about. And so the AI Transparency Journal, it's just a Google Doc. We create it the first week. They just, you put your AI journal, your last name, you share it with me just as a viewer. Every time you use AI, you just date it, you copy and paste the whole conversation, and you write one sentence about how you
Mm.
thought that conversation went and just highlight it to kind of break it up. So it could be, I already knew all this, this was useless, which is great. I tell them I love those responses because they're seeing the limitations of AI and where the human part is so needed. Or, wow, I never thought about it this way. And I keep one so they can see everything I've used AI for in my course just to be transparent because I'm always so open with them. When I grade your work, it is me. If there's a typo on my responses, like it's me. Sneaking through there. My emails are always me, but sometimes I do use AI if I'm struggling. How do I want to phrase this in the syllabus, or what could be a cool design for a new assignment? And I just want to kind of riff with it. I want them to be able to see that. And the last cool part of that is in composition courses for decades, we've been doing what's called a portfolio, where like you write a paper, you include like over time, you've outlined it, you've done peer review it with a classmate. I've given feedback, you've rewritten it, and you can watch that progress evolve. And they reflected it on it, so I can reflect on it at the end of the semester. The AI Transparency Journal is the same thing. I'll ask them to reflect on that at the end of the semester. Just how has your relationship or your view of AI shifted as you look back on this journal? And most of them are just so impressed with themselves, which how
Mm.
much they've learned to navigate this. And even some people who are so anxious about what it meant for their careers and they see its limitations or that it's a tool that they navigate. So it's been a really interesting reflection for students in terms of just removing that barrier of AI feeling like something you always do when you're not supposed to and use in ways that, blurred lines. We get rid of that.
Wow. Something that it made me think about when you were talking is that this all seems so innovative, and you have to have like a really interesting culture in your institution where this type of innovation is encouraged almost, right? So let's go back a little bit and talk about when AI came out, and because I think there's still people who are, oh, I want to go to Blue Books. No way, I'm going to use it. You're all in. I love that. So, what do you say to those people? And tell us that story. Is like when you were thinking about it, were you saying, should I go? 'Cause especially with English, gosh, should I go to Blue Books?
Mhm.
What should I do? Because I think that would help some people listening. Talk us through like your feelings and thoughts during that time.
That's such a great question. I think there's been so much openness and flexibility, especially with English instructors, because we've been the ones, I don't want to say more so than all the other departments, but we get so much AI plagiarism. And
It's
it was,
true.
how do we approach this problem with so many AI generated essays? And there is, when we look into new kinds of AI detection software, and of course, I would never discourage a colleague who wants to go back to Blue Books, but my institution's been very supportive and try new things. I actually am really grateful that I got a grant. The title of the grant I applied for is called Bridging the AI Gap, and just figuring out how to bring these technologies into the classroom so we move beyond plagiarism towards transparency and critical use. And I will say that our administration has been so great in those of us who want to work with this technology and providing support, and institutional research is working with me to track how this is working for students. I did this for my online class over the summer, Elvin. It's the first time I had 100% retention. No one dropped after ad drop. Everyone stayed. A few students really struggled at the end, but they stayed with it and were invested. So from what I'm seeing, it's working. And I'm really lucky to be working somewhere that's letting me try new things. And some things, different apps I'm trying will probably go by the wayside, but that's how you figure out what works for students, through trial and error. And it's been really wonderful.
Wow, that's fantastic. Again, just an innovative place to be able to give that space for you, right? To try something new. And I know that sometimes, obviously, you get resistance and there's skepticism, right, from students, colleagues, administrators. So have you had that, and how have you addressed it? Block out your calendar, bring your team, and lock in your spot, because Insights EDU early bird pricing ends December 15th. We'll see you in Fort Lauderdale, February 17th to the 19th, 2026, for 3 days that will disrupt what you think you know about marketing and enrollment for today's modern learner. Support the EdUp experience for just $5.99 a month and lock in that rate for life. You'll get ad-free early access to episodes. But hurry, price goes up after December 31st, 2025. Visit edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and click support the show.
Definitely seeing the resistance. I understand it. And I also get a lot of deja vu with that resistance, because I was an undergrad at Penn State in the early 2000s when, we're thinking like, Y2K and
Mhm.
.com. I remember one of the professors I adored him. He taught me more about British literature than maybe I even got in graduate school. He did not like online databases. He did not like email. And I understood why, but if he was teaching now, it wouldn't be acceptable, if that's okay to say. Like the tide is going to continue to move. There was an amazing article in Forbes magazine that said, I'm trying to find who said it, Rachel Wells, 71% of employees would prefer to hire a less experienced candidate with a strong AI skills over a more experienced one without them. And I think education over the next few years is just going to be catching up to realize that this is what we need to do. And so I bring that up when I hear skeptics, but I also, and if you'll excuse a Marvel analogy, I recently watched Endgame with my twin boys over the weekend. I'd seen it before, we rewatched it, and I was thinking about the Tesseract and the multiverse. That in my specific universe, with the students I'm working with my passion for digital literacy, the right thing for me to do with my students is to help them engage with this technology. But I also understand, even for just a colleague down the hall, that is not the right answer for them. So when I encounter that pushback, I sometimes say, I understand and respect that this is not the right thing for you to do, but this is what I feel I need to do. And that's been a really beneficial frame as well. Recently, I was told one person to stay in your lane, and we had a productive conversation that digital literacy and composition go hand in hand, as do controversial headlines and talking about tough subjects. So I'm in my lane. I am in my lane. One that concerned me was someone told me AI is just the new thing, like a new movie, and the headline's going to start to diminish. Don't agree. I think this is, just is where we're at. Just like the professor in the early 2000s who didn't like the internet, and now we all have it in our back pocket. I understand the impulse, but I told one colleague, I wish I could put the genie back in the bottle sometimes, but it's out so we can engage with it the best we can. So I will say I'm very lucky at my institution. All the conversations have been respectful and supportive and open. And I've learned a lot from colleagues, like in art history, for example, who have huge concerns about image generators that have scraped artists' work. And I shared an image a student had generated, and she said, I can tell you the artist whose work that is framed on. So I've learned a lot by having the tough conversation. So that's kind of how I deal with pushback. Again, the multiverse. This is my world. This is where I am. This is what I need to do for my students. This is my timeline. And that analogy, I think, is something I'm going to stick with for a while because it clarifies where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I love that. And shout out to Marvel. I'm a Marvel fan. Yeah, Endgame. I
Me
love
too.
that. That's great. So, this got me thinking, what other cool writing experimentation are you thinking about? And what have you seen? Because like I know you're active on LinkedIn, like as I mentioned. I know you're talking to other, I know you're doing professional development. What's going out there? Tell us about what's some exciting stuff.
Been having a lot of fun playing with chatbots.
Okay.
So that has been a game changer. And I know we both talked about, we're both fans of Boodlebox because it's, students don't need subscriptions to work with that chatbot. So while we have amazing writing tutors in the writing center, sometimes a student needs guidance at 3 a.m. or they can't get me at certain time of day and they want someone just to help them with their thesis. So I built a chatbot. I call it Delaware because we're at Delaware County Community College. And it has the guardrails where it will never change their language for them. It has a set questions that it will kind of guide them with, like, tell me what course you're in, tell me what the assignment is, let's brainstorm ideas. And it can tell them things like, oh, I see you're having issues with sentence fragments. Would you like to go over what that is? So, and I've had really positive feedback. And again, if students use it, they copy and paste it, put it in their AI transparency journal. But that's been really wonderful. And I've worked with colleagues showing them how I do this because, again, English professor. And I have like an outline that I put into a large language model, tell it what I'm looking for, and it creates the instructions that guide my chatbot. So that's been a really fun, innovative process. And I'm hoping that that's something I can work with if there's time, again, in the curriculum, that if it's relevant to what students are doing, if they want to build a chatbot and write a reflection about that process and how they could see it tying into their future careers. I think that would be a really fun, innovative experiment.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a fun. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about building, creating chatbots. I'm just curious, what did you use to create yours?
So at first I did it in ChatGPT because again, that's usually my go-to because I want to know how to do it there because that's most of my students' starting frame. And then I moved to Boodlebox because I love that you don't need a subscription to do that. It doesn't cost money on my end. And students don't even have to have an account. Like they don't have to, for other LLMs, you need to have an account to even engage with it. So that's been really useful. So I just share a link and boom, they're in. So I'm still learning because again, familiar base is ChatGPT, and I'm stretching my lens and learning about different large language models and different tools. But Boodlebox has been a really cool, useful platform for me.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Tell us about how do you see AI changing the broader educational landscape over the next 5 years? What do you think is going to happen with AI in the educational landscape?
Yeah, I think one of the great things it's doing, and this is something I know you and I have both been following on LinkedIn and all the conversations online, is as Tyler Cohen recently commented, it's exposing the ignored cracks in education. That for a long
Yes.
time we've been talking about how standardized testing is yucky. I'm sorry for lack of a better word. To expect formulaic essays that are always the same format. We talk about composition. A body paragraph must be transition, topics, evidence, brief wrap up. AI can do all that. We need to focus on personalized learning. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson recently said we should get back to oral examinations. It's like talking to students. What did you learn? I like talking to my online writing about literature students. Tell me what your favorite reading was this semester. Let's just chat about it. Like just more of that in-person personalized learning. Also, I'm a neurodivergent adult. I have ADHD. I have two neurodivergent kiddos. And just the amazing personalization that can come with AI learning. My one son, very short attention span. We're working on that. He's brilliant. He had this assignment where it was like, read this dry worksheet on Egyptian gods and answer these questions. And it was late at night. He'd done football. He was having a hard time paying attention. And I said, just talk it out with the ChatGPT voice feature, just as a starting point. And I was doing dishes and I turned around and he was like, oh, so wait, Hades is like Osiris from, like, and he was connecting it to Percy Jackson. And then Thackeray was connecting it to Marvel, but he could take that lesson anywhere he wanted to go. And when he went back to school the next day, he knew more about the Egyptian gods than maybe the teacher. So just the ability, because when you have one teacher and 25 students, you can't always have those in-depth, focused conversations. So I think just the ability and the voice to text feature and breaking down lessons and creating note cards. And I mean, I'm sure I'm overlooking some of the amazing things that we're going to see these tools do for students. I see that coming more and more to the forefront, that the teacher is going to be more and more the person in front of you that you're having conversations with and exploring your knowledge and answering your questions. And a lot of that individualized learning is going to happen on these platforms.
Yeah, I love that example. So vivid. I had that with my 9-year-old too, and she ended up because she was just curious about a movie we watched. We like to watch a lot of movies, and we like to have this game that we call memory game. And so we're always asking, do you remember this part and that part? But now we're getting deeper into like the meaning of things. So she's like, "Why?" She'll talk to ChatGPT. Why do you think this happened in the movie? And ChatGPT responds, and then she'll say, "But my observation was that I thought it meant this, and what do you think about that?" So is that ongoing?
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that's one thing about ChatGPT that, people often complain that, oh, it's just always trying to please me and tell me I'm right. But in these conversations, it's good that it's not a flat answer. They're saying, oh, it is subjective and you've got a point there and we should explore that further. And I think that that's so useful because, again, as someone who teaches in a classroom with like 19 to 35 students, sometimes you've just got to go to the flat response and move on to keep up with the curriculum. But like your daughter was doing, she was saying, well, I see nuance here. Let's explore that. And the AI can do that.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, I love it. All right, so here's a question that I'm really curious to hear what your response is, and we like to ask everybody that well, almost yeah, it's about everybody we've had on. What do you see as the future of higher education? But with your spin with AI and assessment and everything that you're learning, you're seeing that you're doing, experimenting, what do you think is going to happen in the future of higher education?
That's a really good question. I think a lot like with the public school system, a lot of soul searching and reexamination about what evaluation looks like, especially as someone who's been teaching writing for 20 years. And I've changed a lot over the 10 years because when I was an undergrad, that same professor who said, don't go to databases would take 10 points off for every misplaced comma. And it was terrifying, right? And so who wouldn't reach for AI? Why would I have a student focus on that, especially in a world where AI can correct that immediately? I'm going to be much more interested in the way that they're evaluating sources and connecting to texts and like connecting to human ideas and literature. So I think that's going to be positive. I do think that AI is going to be integrated across the curriculum in the next 5 to 10 years because the expectation is when they move on to the workforce or if they're going to move on to grad school, you have to know how AI is relevant to your field. So I think it's going to become more and more present. I am glad that we are creating spaces where AI is not involved because I think in terms of attention and focus and one-on-one connection, like I'm glad that there's still spaces in campus and instructors who are going to create these pods. We're separate from that and we're still seeing, holding on to some of the more traditional aspects, not the standardized learning, but the community face-to-face, engaging hands-on with whether it's an art class or a science class, the materials. So I think that there will be meaningful, instead of I just hate AI, creating meaningful spaces where we're still holding on to the more traditional aspects. Yeah, I think AI is going to be integrated in most everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% on that, Susan. And those are really interesting insights. And you're doing innovative work. And again, so happy that you're in a culture where that's applied. And of course, you're going to get kicked back. I totally understand that. But it's great to hear these stories in higher ed. So if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you to kind of pick your brain about everything you're doing?
First of all, I would love it. No, it's wonderful because there's a couple like-minded people at work and I love at my campus and I love working with them. But you need to move in this world, you need to move beyond the bubble and see what people are doing at different institutions and at all different stages of the game. So I'd say, please find me. It's dccc.edu. Susan Ray, you'll find me. I post a lot of my ideas on LinkedIn and I have links to my Substack. And yeah, I would love to even just refer you to other people who I'm looking to that are doing a lot of this innovative work and pushing boundaries and asking the hard questions. So we're all in this together.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's Dr. Susan Ray, Ray, and she is the Associate Professor of English at Delaware County Community College. And we will add her LinkedIn to the show notes. So please go to the show notes. Connect with her. Susan, thank you so much for being on this EdUp Extra.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been a really invigorating, energizing conversation.
Fantastic. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUped. If you're afraid of success, this message isn't for you. Every year, higher ed talks about change. But Insights EDU 2026, it's the catalyst. The Modern Learner Report drops here first, revealing how learners are thinking, searching, and deciding right now. Spoiler, most institutions aren't keeping up. 3 days on the beach in Fort Lauderdale, February 17th to the 19th, 2026. Over 65 powerhouse speakers, real strategy, real data, only built for leaders ready to own their transformation. Reserve your spot now at insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15th. The EdUp experience has delivered over 1,000 episodes with higher ed leaders from around the world. Now you can support the show for just $5.99 a month and lock in that rate for life when you join before December 31st, 2025. You'll enjoy ad-free early access to episodes. Go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com. Click support the show and secure your lifetime rate today.